The parcel of land that is currently being considered for development in this area is located at the intersection of North Sycamore Street and Washington Boulevard, which both are major thoroughfares for this developed area. There is access to and from the Custis Memorial Parkway, also known as Highway 66, just off of North Sycamore Street, less than a quarter mile away from this surface lot. This area also has public bus access, and a short walking distance away is a Capitol Bike Trail location and an access point to the Washington and Old Dominion Trail, which allows a safe method for pedestrians to navigate East Falls Church. This area has a high motility aspect to it based on all of these features. The development that is being proposed for this parking area, this parcel of land, is proposed to be occupied by 2025 and consists of a 140,000 square foot office space building, 30,000 square foot of retail space, a fast food restaurant with no drive-through that's approximately 7,000 square feet, and a 106 unit condominium building. In order to accommodate all of the parking that is required of these establishments, underground parking is being proposed. There will also be an additional parking areas, surface lots for these areas, as well as additional spaces to allow the usage of the Metro riders to still be able to park in this area.
I-66 has the highest average daily traffic flow at 85,000, while Washington Boulevard and Sycamore Street are at the lowest because there's mostly housing surrounding the area, and I-66 allows people to travel to work and to retail spaces, which is why it's higher.
So we used the Trip Generation Handbook and IT Recommended Practice from 2017 in order to determine our projected trip generation for the establishments located in our development. The office space we deemed as land use 750 and office park. The retail space was deemed land use 820 or shopping center. Fast food restaurant without a drive-through is land use 933. And the condominium is land use 221 multifamily housing in the mid-rise unit. We determined those just based on our layout and our assumptions. Mid-rise was based on how many floors were going to be required to accommodate 160 units. So you can refer to the same book if you want to look at the graphs and double check equations if they make sense, or if the sizes change for any of these, those are going to be key points to look at. For all of our establishments except for the condominiums, we used 1,000 square foot of gross floor area as our dependent variable. And for the condominiums, we used the total number of dwelling units just for simplicity's sake. Just because we don't know how many residents are actually going to be living in this or occupying those units after construction. So for simplicity, we used an analysis of weekdays, both morning and afternoon. This was just because we figured more people would be out and about during the weekdays due to it being the work week. None of our analysis was done primarily. We didn't do it ourselves for the area, so we used the ITE trip generation. So these are estimates and are not going to be exact numbers. So with the office space, it had the second highest trip generation. For the morning, it was 274 total trips among entering 89%, so it's 244, and only 30 exiting. And then the office space in the afternoon is 238 total trips being generated. And that's a reversal of the percentages. So 202 of those are exiting and 36 are entering. Our next lowest trip generator is going to be the retail space. In the morning, it was 160 total trips being generated. In the afternoon, 237. So it's pretty comparable to the office space, just slightly less. The highest trip generation actually comes from the fast food restaurant without the drive-through. The morning produced 536 trips, and the afternoon produced 345 trips. And the condominium produced the least amount of trips with 52 in the morning and 63 in the evening. And the way we went about these calculations, we just pulled the pages from the respective establishments and land uses from the IT trip journal. Then we used the fitted curve equation and plugged in our dependent variables based on that in order to develop the trips. We did try to take note of the fact that some of these had a small number of studies actually being done for them, like the fast food restaurant without the drive-through window. There were only 7 studies done. So this may not be a comparable data source for that sort of establishment, but this was our source that we had with us, and we wanted to remain consistent between the different establishments for our trip projection.
Overall, it's estimated that every establishment will increase traffic volume by at least 10%. The establishment that will cause the most traffic volume would be retail space. As we've been studying in this class, the gravity model helps show why retail establishments attract more users than any other establishment could. This is because retail has an economic growth associated with it, whereas fast food does have economic growth, but it is not as great. Also, given that the area mostly has houses and other housing establishments there, it's not going to really attract many new users to those roads. So retail would be the establishment that would cause the greatest traffic volume. Also, given the area, it is expected that the economic character of the users is on average higher. So it makes sense that most people will be able to afford retail trips more often than, let's say, in a rural country or a different area.
In order to determine if a signal will need to be added on the intersection of Washington Boulevard and North Sycamore Street, a warrant analysis needed to be completed. The warrants are to be evaluated using the MUTCD, which gave us 9 specific warrants to look at. Those warrants are the 8-hour volume, 4-hour volume, peak hour, pedestrian volume, school crossing, coordinated signal coordination, crash experience, roadway network, and intersection near a grade crossing. According to the volumes taken prior to development, Warrant 1 Condition A on Table 4C-1 was met. Warrant 4 refers to the pedestrian volume, which was not met according to the current conditions, but after development we are expecting a significant rise in foot traffic, which will increase our pedestrian volume. The remainder of the warrants were either not met or not applicable. Based on this warrant analysis, we are determining that a light would be necessary for this development.
As this parcel is currently the only public parking available to Metro riders, after the development of this project, even more parking levels are likely to be needed. Also, as this study's trip generation predictions were based on the ITE manual, more specific data would be required to better depict the possible traffic impact of this development.